to the Cinementalists. Noun, plural. Definition, those whose love for movies runs so deep, they can't help but do a podcast about them. Hosted by Colton Robertson and Joseph George. Hello everybody and welcome in to the Cinementalists. Today we conclude our coverage of the Indiana Jones franchise with Dial of Destiny. It was released a year ago on June 30th, 2023. It was written for the screen by Jez and John Henry Butterworth, David Koepp, and James Mangold, directed by James Mangold. I am Colton Robertson. I'm joined by Joseph George. What's up, homie?
Oh, what up, what up? Always a pleasure to be here.
Oh, and it's always a pleasure to have you. And on the screen below me that I can see and you cannot, well, maybe now you can. Actually, we got video back. What's up, KBZ Kyler Barnett?
What's going on, man?
Hey, good to have you. Good to have you. Let's talk Dial of Destiny. Obviously, this is the first one of the run that I am the only one who has seen it prior. I got to catch this in theaters. I watched it again about a year ago from the release of this podcast. So it's been a minute since I got to revisit it, and I'm excited to talk through it. Let's talk to you, Kyler. How'd you feel on your first watch of Dial of Destiny?
Yeah, so we were kind of talking before how I just felt like last year when the movie came out, like I had seen a lot of hype and I had read some articles because Harrison Ford was doing a lot of press right before the movie, and that was just really interesting to hear and see all of the press, during that stretch of time, and just his thoughts on the character. It was just so different from how he's felt and talked about almost any other role or movie, and we've kind of touched on that in previous, but it's really loud in the press rollout before this movie, it seemed. And so then the movie came out, and I felt like I really didn't hear much. And it's like I talked to this, like, it's very seldom I feel like you see either good or bad. Like, you usually get one of those two reactions. And this one, I just felt like there was not much. Like, and that just kind of, like, I stopped hearing about it, and I missed the theater run. And then I was like, well, I guess I'll just have to wait till streaming. And then, life goes, and I hadn't really thought about it. Like I said, there wasn't really any hype or anything, and I wasn't hearing anything, so I never really came back to it. And so watching it last night, I didn't really know what to expect, and I was actually really impressed. Like, obviously, the age and just some of the story bits that are gone in the previous movies, like, there's only so much that, can be done, I guess, but I really, really thought, like, the things that make indie great, like at its core, like some of the little bits and the heart and like the kind of whimsical nature of it at times, and stuff, like, that's still there. And Harrison Ford, no matter how old he gets, clearly can still do that thing.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
He still has that, he's got the juice for it, man. Like, still at that age, like it really doesn't come across as like, offensive or in anything. Like, it's not like an assault on the character at this point. Like, like, people might argue that at this stage with some, titles or characters or actors, but like it doesn't really come across that way. Like, they still do the core well. There's 100%. Some things I have to disagree with, and like, honestly, this movie did do some things that, like, looking back at, it's probably gotten me a little bit more, I guess, I don't want to say upset, but like, just, it's like, I don't know if that quite works for me like they think it should, but it's like, I'm willing to forgive it. It's Indiana Jones.
No, yeah, that's where I'm at with it. If I'm
ever going to be soft on something, it's like, this is it. Like,
especially
I'm okay
when you
it.
end a franchise the way that this ended. It's one of those things where I went and saw this in the theaters, and I'm a lot more plugged into like film Twitter and all that sort of stuff. So the reception of this movie was excruciatingly negative. It was extremely bad. And I went into it having read all of that. So I was prepared for the worst, and I left the theater with a tear-stained face. So I was very, very fine. I was fine with it. I was like, yeah, a bunch of the movie could be a lot better. I will say, like, I think that, but ultimately when you have Harrison Ford playing Indiana Jones, like you said, Kyler, you know you've at least got one thing of the movie that is firing on all cylinders consistently. But Joe, how about you? How'd you feel about your first viewing of Dial of Destiny?
Nice to not be the only first viewing newbie here. It's nice to have another someone along with me for the ride. But no, this I guess I've heard a lot of nothing too, and it's crazy that this movie did come out last year. That's kind of just weird to think. Every other movie, like I know we were in 2008. What is that for Crystal
Yeah,
Skull? So
Crystal Skull.
I'm
Yeah.
still alive, but like this one, this is so recent. And but again, I've it's been there, I guess, on Disney Plus. I don't know for how long, and I just never have made it even this far in the franchise. So I've never had any reason to watch it
Right.
until now. But I'm coming away. I'm with you. The first large kind of big, the first and second acts of the movie, they're kind of there. They're there. They're okay. Um, and I said last time that like there was a touch of Spielberg that I think was lost, and I think we arrived at it was like more George was coming
Mm.
through with Crystal Skull. I don't feel much of Spielberg. I mean, obviously he's not here for this one, so it's like I don't feel the Spielbergness isn't coming through, and that was a lot of what I loved a lot of the older movies, and
Yeah.
and I think I'm kind of in the same camp where the first indie movies, he is indie, and the stuff that he's doing makes him legendary. And it's not that he's already legendary. People look up to him, and he is Indiana Jones, but he's
Mm.
still rough around the edges, and he still gets shit on a lot of the times, and it's by the very last second that he gets out. And here
Mm.
he's that legend kind of status, and now he's even kind of being made fun of a little bit at some points, or it's kind of just of his age and stuff like that. And it's he's definitely reached an even higher legend status than before in Crystal Skull. But
Interesting. I actually disagree
Well,
with that.
I was gonna say I think it's really interesting how they run the beat of like, oh, all throughout the movies he's the professor, and like you can recall earlier in the franchise, like the girl blinks and it's like I love you on her eyelids. They're all
Right, right.
drooling, like everyone's hanging on every word he says. And then in this movie, in his class, like he just became the old professor that like nobody listens to, and
Mm.
like it's just boring. Like
Yeah, he's a,
that's what it's like turned to now. Like so
I,
they
I I've taken him as a man past his prime, obviously.
yeah,
Like he was a legend. Is kind of how I look at
mm,
it. Is
well,
kind
and
of how
like
I
you got to
perceive
think
this
in the
movie.
fight scenes, a lot of times, like yeah, he has some good moments, but for the majority of the action sequences, like when he goes after somebody, a lot of times he gets humbled because he's just he doesn't have
He's
it.
an old fuck.
Like that
Well,
huge henchman, like he just like cannot be fucked with by Indiana
dude,
in this
yeah,
movie. Like
yeah.
and that, I mean, what do you want him to do? Like kick his ass? Like
No,
people
no,
would
yeah.
be they'd be wouldn't fuck with that
Oh, and
either.
he's still
Like
got
yeah,
the fighting spirit, though. He's still going
yeah,
at it, and
no,
I appreciate
exactly.
that.
And I think that's
There's,
more
yeah, there's a part whenever the important part for me is whenever the CIA operative doesn't know who Indiana Jones is. Whenever she's expressly like, he's like, "Who are you?" And she's like, "That's exactly my question for you. Like, I don't like who are you? Like why are you meeting with her? Like, what's is it?
right.
ah,
Like they don't. Indiana Jones is so far past his prime that he's become obsolete. That there is nothing important about him anymore. And I kind of appreciate that angle. All the legend stuff comes from his goddaughter, which makes sense. He was her
Right.
godfather who's been this elusive figure in her life. Like, that would be where the source of fascination comes from. Even the Nazi doesn't remember Indiana Jones. He's like, I'm sorry, who are you? Like,
yeah,
you got that. But I won't disagree entirely that it lacks self awareness.
mm-hmm.
It has a certain degree of that. It does.
Yeah,
But I will agree that it is less than Crystal Skull.
you guys are totally right. Yeah, like they're actually downplaying him a whole lot more than they are upplaying him. I guess it was
Well,
the
no, and here's the thing. I don't think it's downplaying him as much as it's just like, okay, what he makes decisions with later in the movie, like towards the finale, and just the way he feels when he's finally like doing some of these things, like it, it very much feels like this is like he's I don't know how to explain what I'm trying to say. Like
His
there's a
morals are
sense of finality
always.
to it. Like he's looking for the end. Like
Mhm.
this is his last like adventure that he's chasing. Like he's enjoying it. You can tell, but like you can also tell he's just looking for like a place to like stop it at. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like I mean, late in the movie, obviously you see where he's at. And I mean that was emotion. That was an
Dude.
interesting beat.
The end of
I
this
could
movie
not
is
have
so fucking
forecasted
good.
what the hell was going to happen
Oh,
in the ending of this movie. That certainly had my jaw on the floor, but
I'm a fan. I'm a
it was
huge
very
fan of the
powerful.
end.
It was. I will tell you, it was like, I mean, and then the twist with Helena, just a fucking right hook from hell. I mean, my God, just
Yeah, I love Phoebe
robbed the man of
Waller-Bridge.
it.
I love Phoebe Waller-Bridge, and I think that she does so good as Helena Shaw. I think
No,
that
I agree. Her performance did like I didn't really know what to again, like I hadn't heard much. So I really didn't know what to expect from her character. Like I had liked what I had seen in the trailer, but I really didn't know what to expect. And she's really fun alongside him because she is very much like honestly, as far as her mentality leading up through the whole movie, she's honestly closer a little bit to what Indy like despised and was always going up against a long time ago, like
hmm
the in it for the money stuff. Like obviously those people were a little more crooked than just in it for the money. Like she's legitimately nobly chasing the money for a
right,
good reason. Not trying to compare her to a Nazi or anything. I'm just
right.
saying like that's the kind of person Indy generally doesn't like jive
Yeah, no,
with very well.
100%.
And so the way that they can go off of each other, I mean, like he's the godfather to her and stuff. And so like it's just this trope of like Indy's always having like Mutt wasn't exactly what Indy would have been expected as his son. Helena is the goddaughter, like similar type
Well,
thing. So
and he almost feels responsible for the way she's turned out
yeah,
because she says, "You like if only there had been someone specifically anointed for the job to
Hmm.
look after me after my father died." You know, like
right.
I
that's what a
wonder if
godfather is. So
it's
like
in the
it's
name. Yeah.
yeah, and I love that. I love that choice. You know, so like that's the thing is that the story has the bones. There's no reason on God's green earth for it to be 2.5 hours.
No,
Holy fucking Christ. Is this movie way too long? I
yeah.
think you could cut out legitimately the entire beginning. I don't think it needs to be there. I think that it being there actually does a massive disservice to the movie.
I was trying to figure out where, I'm like, where is it going? When is it going to kind of start? Because it kind of just felt like
Well,
we're
and
finding.
it's kind of like it kind of sucks because it's kind of burdened by the whole like we're seeing him at a stage of his life that we've never seen him before. So that beginning is really clogged with a lot of like exposition on that sort of state of him.
Mhm.
You know, the whole retirement thing and all of that. And then, I mean,
I mean,
I
the opening sequence in
oh,
Nazi
the
Germany.
flashback.
Yeah,
Oh,
that entire sequence can go. Uh, that sequence isn't good. It's got the spirit, you know, it's got the fun, it's got the vibe. Um, it just kind of puts on display the difference between modern filmmaking versus the old ways of filmmaking. Even Crystal Skull, everything they establish in that flashback is rehashed later in the movie via some exposition.
Mm.
Helena explains that her father was after the Archimedes dial and everything, and that's how, like, if you need to explain what the Archimedes dial does, you have a lecture where he's teaching about Archimedes. Why not plug it in there instead of being like, and this thing controls space and time, you know, da 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 da.
Mhm.
Like, I think that it does a disservice to the movie for the first 20 minutes to be a nostalgia trip.
Yeah, that's
they
one thing
wanted to
we've
de-age him.
praised.
They wanted to de-age
Oh,
him
a
to
hundred
do some
percent.
more
This was a test run, or like
a
just
good.
to do
They
it.
wanted like
Yeah, like
younger, quicker action. They wanted to be able to put that on display. I mean,
mhm.
that's what it is.
I
Which
guess.
ironically probably cost them a great
Yeah.
amount of money making this movie, and it
What do you
arguably
think
doesn't
the
belong.
budget on this movie is?
Oh no. Oh no. Okay, Dune was like
755.
I'm gonna say it's above 100 mil probably. If I had to, around there is what I would guess.
And what was your guess, Kyler?
Well, shit, I guess Joe's got me backed off of my guess now, but
Maybe I'm
I'll
overinflating
put
it. I
it.
don't know, but
No, I was going higher, like way, way higher, but I'll say 325.
It was $300 million. It was $295 million to make this movie. Um,
I bet you that was like 85 right in the first opening 20
yeah,
minutes.
100%.
man, and
And
we
it was a COVID production, and keeping it up like
mm,
that does add to the budget. It did for every movie, so like it's not entirely going to the movie itself. But um, when it comes to James Mangold as a filmmaker, I really enjoy him. I love Logan. I loved Logan. I like the Wolverine a lot. He's made some good stuff in Ford versus Ferrari, Walk the Line, uh, Girl Interrupted. He's done a lot of good stuff. The fact that they handed him Indiana Jones in a send off for a character and actor that rings extraordinarily similar in premise to Logan, and it falls. I mean, it doesn't fall flat because the ending gets me,
mm,
but the filmmaking is nowhere near what it is in Logan. It's kind of astonishing that this movie, like, I agree that Spielberg is the missing juice. I think that if we still have Spielberg at the helm, it's a completely different movie. And it doesn't need to be that different, but it is a different movie.
mm-hmm.
Um, the chase sequences are fun. The most exciting one is the chase through the streets in the moon landing parade, going through the subway on the horse and stuff like that's fucking awesome.
Ooh.
The chase in where are they? When they're running from Shaw's fiance and they're through the streets
On
of
the little trike
on the
bikes or
rickshaw thing.
something.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
Oh,
that was
yeah.
cool. That
That's
was
fun.
fun.
That's fun. Like it's all fun. It's all fun, but there's this lack of weight. I feel like that. Like I don't feel like we are moving the way we did in the Last Crusade on the tanks and like hanging off the sides of it and everything, and
Mm-hmm.
the fucking mines in Temple of Doom. Like it lacks that weight. It feels like a hollow shell of what Indiana Jones used to be, and I know that that's semi the point, but I don't think that should bridge into the filmmaking.
Yeah, Hollow. That's a good. I don't want to sum the whole movie up kind of that way, but until you get to the end, it feels kind of just a little hollow, and you
It's
need.
fascinating that I loved this movie out of the theater, and I liked it a lot my second time. I still enjoy it. I'm incredibly forgiving because I love Indy. I love the ending of this movie. I can't emphasize that enough. I found it fascinating how boring this movie is for a long time. For me,
Yeah.
and this is my third watch, so that does affect things. It doesn't have near the rewatchability that the other movies do for me. Like the first hour and 45 minutes, like until we get to Archimedes' burial site,
Yeah.
like
I think that's the
I
first scene I put in.
struggle.
Like,
I struggle, dude. Like, I mean, I like the stuff on the water whenever the exposition drop about, talking to Shaw about, if you could go back in time, what would you do? And he's like, I'd stop my son from enlisting. Why? Well, why did he enlist to please you? No, he did it to piss me off. What would you say to him? Well, I'd tell him he was going to die. Like Harrison Ford is so fucking good, so fucking vulnerable. It's one of those examples of like, wow, is he just an incredible fucking actor doing stuff we've never really got to see him do as Indiana Jones, and that's
I'm
really
I'm
really pleasing.
Yeah, I'm glad you bring that up because there was multiple lines like Indy's been all there's multiple movies where they did a really good job with like one-liners and stuff, but a lot of those are like clever or cheeky kind of one-liner things that Indy's great at or another character is great at, whether it
mm-hmm.
be Sean Connery or Marion Ravenwood or
Mm-hmm.
whatever. That being said, the depth that he put on display and like the emotion he displayed in some of the one liners in this movie multiple times are very, very good. Like I remember when early in the movie when Helena tracks him down at the bar after his last class,
Wombat?
and
Yeah.
he says like, "Why are you chasing the thing that drove your dad crazy?"
Ooh,
And then, "Wouldn't you?" And then the face he put on, like that whole
ooh.
thing was just. There was multiple
Well, because he
times where he
literally
was.
does. Like that's a
Last
great
Crusade.
connection to that's the Last Crusade, wouldn't you?
Yeah,
He's
no, and
chasing the Holy Grail. Like I
that's
love that.
exactly why I took note of that moment,
Oh,
because of that, the connection. But yeah, there was multiple times where, like I said, he went to like some much more emotional,
Hmm.
and like I said, I think it's because you get this like sort of beaten, battered man. Like, yes, you've seen all the hits that have put him to this point in his age right now, but like
Yeah.
you still expect him to be the guy who could take it and keep going, and that's not like quite like.
And
I
I
mean,
and this is the thing that one of the things that people didn't love about this is the reason Indy's in this state. But I think the reason Indy's in this state is the only thing that could have gotten Indy to this state, which is that his son died, his family fell apart, his wife couldn't recover from their son's demise, and it drove them apart, which is unquestionably similar to the arc that Han Solo and Leia have in the sequel
oh,
trilogy. Um,
hmm.
uh, kind of to the point where people were like, again, like really. But and I don't agree with that as a criticism. When we're dealing, like, I like the aged hero thing. I think that's why I like Luke Skywalker in The Last Jedi. It's why I like this movie. I think that for him to have been, he says, I've been shot 9 times, once by your father. For him to, I've drank the blood of Kali. Like I've done all of this. But the thing that broke him, the thing that made him the man he is that we see, was the death of his son. Like that, a real thing that destroyed him. And I love that choice. I think that, and it makes sense that that's what drove him and Marion Ravenwood apart. Like I think that being his lonesomeness and his feeling useless in the modern world and his being removed from, like, he's a relic of a bygone era. That's how Indiana Jones feels. And I think that that's a great motivator behind the story, and I think that makes the ending when he's like, I'm already history. Why not become a part of it? Is a great idea. I think it's a brilliant idea.
Oh my god! Did I read it wrong at first? Whenever he said there was no end to her grief, I thought that Marion was dead. Like I thought that they weren't just split. Like I thought that like they split and she like I don't know, like that she wasn't alive. And at least maybe I just didn't hear it right. But that's at least my.
I can't blame you for thinking
where
that.
my head was.
I'd never read that way.
Because,
But
man, when she popped back up on screen, whenever she walked through that door, it was even more of like a, oh my god! Like I didn't even know she was in the movie at all. At all. So like the ending of the movie, 100%.
They show a separation agreement at the beginning and him throwing a magnet over her face.
Oh, okay.
So
that's true. Okay, yeah.
And doesn't Sala say, like, have you called Marion or something like that?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
At one point when he's getting ready.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm just focused. I was just like, fucking Sala.
Focused on the
I don't know.
bad side.
And but okay, yeah, no.
Yeah, and it really sucks that Disney couldn't have anticipated that Key-Kwan would have the resurgence he did. Otherwise, he would have absolutely been in this fucking movie.
That would have been
as
awesome.
a short round.
Yeah,
but
Man.
But at least we got the classics. We got Marion, we got Sala coming. And I really thought he was gonna go with him too. He's like, I got my passport too, man. I'm
miss
ready
the
to
desert,
go.
Indy.
Best hype man ever, bro. He was.
Give him hell, Indiana
Yes.
Jones. That was always one of my favorite moments in the trailer. When I've talked about that a couple times. Like the trailer would move me whenever I would see it in theaters, and that was always one of my favorite. Like they'd be like, "Give him hell, Indiana Jones." Dun 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 dun. And I'd be like,
In the theater, the opening sequence, was it even more Uncanny Valley? Like, could you?
It looked. No, it's bad. Like it's bad no matter where you are. I don't like, and it's not terrible de-aging.
It's just the lips.
It's just obvious
the
that
emotion,
it's not. Yeah, like it's.
I really noticed.
It looks
the
good in
clunkiness.
stills.
Yeah,
It looks
I was
good
gonna
in
say,
photos.
I noticed like when he there was in that opening sequence when he's sitting there hanging and like he falls. That whole sequence, like where he's so much motion. When he falls and like there's that thud where like everything shakes and stuff. I noticed that
You
like in
can
those moments,
see the
it's really
movement.
bad.
It's
It's
bad.
really bad,
And
man. It's really
I
bad.
actually did not notice that in theater. I have it on
Mm.
Blu-ray now, and I was watching on. There are moments where he turns his
Yeah.
head, and I can tell it's
And like
tracking
you can like
something.
almost see the like up
Yeah,
here where the hairline is. You can almost see like
That's
yeah.
why,
and
like,
like
I did notice that a couple times, and like you said, it's really good on
why?
stills and like that reveal scene, like right then when the light comes up on
yeah,
him
like
and
that's
flashes,
cool.
like it's a good reveal and it looks good then, but like for an action sequence as intense as that was, like it does not come through very well. Like that it was jarring in that moment for me. Like because
Mm-hmm.
that opening sequence, whether it was like necessary or not, like the whole like him hanging there and escapade of escaping and everything, like that's inherently like a fun
Yeah,
sequence.
it
But it
evokes.
was
Yeah,
just
it is.
The gun shooting the
distracting. Like
train, you know, like it's
Yeah,
stuck, and
yeah.
yeah,
like, I mean, there were cool. It was a
No,
cool
and there's
opening,
classic
but
indie stuff. Him dressing up as a Nazi, getting caught because there's a bullet hole going through through the uniform. Like that's fun stuff. And him sitting down, eating with them for a second.
yeah.
Like so, like on paper, all of it should be working. And I think that there comes this point whenever, because like I said, I like James Mangold. I think he's a really good filmmaker. There's got to come a point when you go, what's the corporate interference that causes movies to look like that?
yeah,
They all look like this
it's
now. Like, I don't know why all of them look like this, but they all look like this. The train sequence should be fun, and it is fun. It, like, on paper, all that, it looks bad.
Damn, we've seen train sequences like so similar so
this is
Exactly.
the
much
So,
too. I
like,
first
mean,
opening
like,
that is
yeah.
just isn't good. Like it's
it
great.
isn't.
Every other opening we've praised, we've been like, oh my god, indie, they always come in with the openings. They're great. They're amazing. And this one's like almost actively bad because of the de-aging. The sequence
Yeah.
is cool and the action's cool, but that's it. Like that's like
Again, on paper, it's a good idea, and it's a good prologue, because it's not so much like, the intros we've seen previously are like 10 minutes,
Well,
maybe.
and that's where I
hmm,
think like it's the train sequence and nothing else. Like, why did it need to be the whole like him getting captured and then the nuke and then the escape and then the train? Like
Yeah.
that whole first thing with the whole like hanging there and then escaping and the bomb dropping and
Hmm.
everything, that was like probably 10 or 12, 15 minutes
Yeah.
almost in and of itself. And then the train sequence is
Another
another
10
10 or
minutes on it.
15. That
Yeah,
was your
like,
opening sequence. Like we never needed that long to have that much, like to have
no.
fun on the opening sequences and the other ones.
Yeah,
Like
and they are trying to do a lot of heavy lifting story wise. They're building up the Archimedes dial. They're building up the villain of the movie. They're showing the relationship he had to Helena's father. They're doing all of that. But that's what the previous movies have been able to do without doing that.
right.
Like the previous movies have been able to emphasize the relationships that existed prior to the movie without us having seen that. Like Crystal Skull, say what you will about it, but like Ray Winstone's character who betrays him like 3 times, and like just like Burma, and like all that stuff. Like they have an implied history that goes back a long way. You understand why Indiana Jones trusts him. You understand why he doesn't at times. Like. And we never see them see that flashback. We never see them doing that. We don't need to. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not something you need to see. The brief, like,
They didn't do it with Ox either. They didn't really do it with
they
Ox
didn't do it with
either.
Ox at all. With his dad, we get one scene with his dad where
It's
they don't show his face and they make him say the Greek alphabet,
That's
and you
it.
immediately understand everything about their relationship. So,
Yeah.
like, there's just a lot that didn't need to happen in the beginning of this movie. You take that beginning sequence off and you start it with an aged old Harrison Ford. Obviously, you don't have the but like, if there's ever a time to break the mold for there not being an exciting opening sequence, is it not when he's 80 years old?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Like, that feels like the time tonally to go
In his
and he's
office
slowing
doing
down.
boring ass work or
Yeah,
something like that.
exactly.
Literally the complete opposite. Yeah, and I mean the de-aging stuff is whatever. That's just Disney kind of doing their thing. I can get past it and not hate the whole
No,
movie because of it.
Yes, I agree.
But
yeah.
but even beyond that, like after the opening sequence, until we get to Archimedes' tomb, man, I am like, sure, getting what's the thing that leads them to
The Graphicos.
Graphicos, thank you. That was kind of cool, and the chases to get, it's just a bunch of chases kind of over and over is what it feels like. It's like, all right, we're this black market deal, and really cool. The visually, I think that's kind of the
definitely the best sequence.
Looks
in the
really,
movie
really
looking.
good
Yeah.
there. And so, I mean, that was cool. And then it's like, all right, now we're on the run. Now everyone's chasing each other. Okay, we're stopping for a little bit. Now, what's the next move? Okay, now we're on the run again, on getting the Graphicos. Now
They do a lot of cat and mouse in this one.
Yeah,
a lot of cat and mouse, which has always been an element of indie, but it hasn't been the entire movie. So like, I do.
Oh,
agree.
and it kind of felt boring and stale the way they did it. Like, you think about how the cat and mouse has looked in other movies, and obviously, yes, like, younger Indy is going to have a little bit more leash to do a little bit more in those scenes. But, like, you can't just keep making that excuse anymore.
It's not
like,
on Harrison Ford here,
yeah,
though. It's
no,
on the
it's not.
direction. It's on the way the movie looks.
Like, I think back to Raiders, and maybe this is completely unfair. I'm not necessarily saying I was expecting this to be Raiders, but the cat and mouse, like, you've got Marion in the whatchamacallit, like the little,
basket. Yeah, the laundry
basket
yeah.
getting carried, and then you think about in the Last Crusade, like Sala and Brody, and then Sala puts him in the truck, and then the truck flips the thing up, and it's a Nazi truck, surprise! Like, all of that, like, it's just a lot, and I don't know. Again, I hate to, like, just
that's why
beat it
I
up,
don't want to pile.
like,
I don't want to pile, but like there are good moments in an overall okay movie. You know,
Yeah.
like and the end is I genuinely think once we go through the rift, and even building up to that, that's when the movie's at its best. The last 50 minutes are really, really strong.
Well, and like, here's the thing. The age of Indy and the attitude of Indy at this stage of his life does make for some really fun storylines. Like, we talked about, like, the some of the, like, one-liners and stuff that are just really powerful, and, like, they hold a different emotion at this stage from him and with what, like, has happened to him at this point in his life. But, like, to me, one of the scenes that's really, really fun in that last 30-40 minutes, when they're about to go through and he is screaming at him, and, like,
your calculations are wrong. I'm like,
you get it? Like, he doesn't care. Like, he's trying to spin it a little bit, but the way he's saying it and selling it, like,
he's done.
Wrong, right, indifferent. He doesn't care.
I don't know where we're going, but it's not 1930 whatever, you know, or something.
That was really fun.
Again,
like,
Harrison Ford is so fucking good. Like that line read, the one that I just referenced, where he goes, "Your calculations are wrong." Like, the way that he emphasizes wrong and like laughs over it. Like, oh my God, was that fucking good, man. And I mean, whenever they get there and him adding it all up, him seeing the wristwatch that he puts on and being like,
yeah,
him looking at it and kind of being like, oh, wait a second.
Okay.
You know, like...
I'm also dumb, and I also read this wrong at first. But I was like, I hope they're not doing this. I'm like, no way they're trying to make him Archimedes, right? And like complete the loop and everything. I was like, no, don't make him Archimedes.
But it's cool that Archimedes, like, do they allude to the fact that Archimedes did this so that they would come back and end the siege of Syracuse?
I think so. He says, you were always supposed... Like, Archimedes, like, kind of knew...
But I couldn't tell if that was because of time mechanics.
About it, like,
you know, like,
wasn't it Indy, like, talking? I can't remember if it was him.
Well, it's Archimedes speaking, and Indiana is talking to Helena, explaining what Archimedes is saying.
Yeah, and it did kind of seem like they needed him, and then Helena's like, he can't have that. Like, you got to take that back. He's got to finish it himself.
And the way she's talking to Archimedes, but she's actually talking to Indy, and that whole thing, like, oh, it's so good. It's so, and so, like, that's why, like I said, the ending of this movie does a lot of heavy lifting for me. Enough for me to forgive it, you know, and enough for me to actively love the movie. Like, there is no watching the Indiana Jones franchise for me without watching Dial of Destiny. It's never going to be something where I go, I only watch the first 3. I only watch the first 4. No, I'm watching all 5. You know, like, that is, if I watch the Indiana Jones franchise and I'm going beginning to end, I'm going beginning to end, you know, like, that's how it's going to happen, because, man, I love the ending of this movie. And sadly, all my favorites, they all do come from that very, very last scene with Marion. It's undoubtedly my favorite scene of the movie. I will never forget. I was a fucking wreck in the movie theater. I saw this in a double feature with Past Lives. I saw Past Lives earlier in the night, and then I went and saw Dial of Destiny after. And when I watched Dial of Destiny, it was an 11:30 showing of a 2.5 hour movie, and I'm walking out at like 2 a.m. with a tear-stained face, nobody in the parking lot. It was very, very special. I had a great fucking time, and I was so glad I got to catch it in theaters. But man, when Marion Ravenwood walks through that door and they have that moment, again, we get another one of those Harrison Ford line deliveries whenever they're alone and Marion goes, "That looks like it hurts," and he goes, "Everything hurts."
I knew he was going to say it
God.
before he even said it,
Oh
man.
my
I was
God,
like,
dude.
if this.
So that's my favorite line because of the way he delivers it. It's the everything hurts, the heart, the soul, everything. I wish I would have died in 200 whatever the fuck BC. That's where I wanted to be. And her being like, "I know how that feels," and him being like, "Well, where doesn't it hurt?" And oh my God, every single step of the way, I'm just going, I'm just, and then my favorite shot is the last embrace they have in the pulled back. Like, I think it's a great way to conclude their story. And I was talking about a choice that makes this the end of the Indiana Jones franchise, which is that every other cut to credits there's visuals in the background as the credits roll. This does a iris
on his hat.
black
Okay.
over credits.
And
I think
he grabs the hat.
he grabs
too.
it. Yeah,
It's no, it never could be anyone else.
Nobody else is ever going to get that hat. It's his
hat.
So like it's one of those things where I love the ending. I think that the ending is so strong, and it does make me, in a movie that is so until the last act, it does enough heavy lifting for me to really, really appreciate it, because like I love Antonio Banderas. I love that actor. I think he is so fucking good, and him popping up as the ship captain who's just kind of the friend. Like, I like that sequence. Like, every sequence individually is fine. It's the fact that they all add up to kind of nothing that kind of ends up being like, okay, man, what are we doing?
Yeah,
yeah.
The end, I felt like it was gonna get its love. I'll pick the 212 BC as my favorite scene. This is kind of what, for me, you guys kind of said that Crystal Skull would be like the one I would get all the juice out of, and it's sci-fi everything. I think this is actually the MacGuffin in the story I was in. I mean, that's what kept me in, even whenever the movie wasn't kind of whatever in the first two acts. I'm like, I like this time. I don't know, time travel. I guess it's Indiana Jones time travel now, so it's still pretty sci-fi. But this connection to history and him, whenever he was like, "Oh, I could die here," and he was like, "And I'm completely okay with dying here." He's like, "I could die within an hour of less than an hour of blood loss, but a few more conversations with Archimedes, and I'm good. I'm living the history. I've studied." Oh, that might be my favorite line. Whenever he says like, "I've studied, I have just learned like in books my whole life, and now I'm witnessing it." That's not the right verbiage at all, but like just that moment that he's having there was like, oh my God, where I was like, you know what? Please let him die here. I was like, actually, so there is no shot of him coming back, but I'm glad he was taken back. Time was fixed. History was not changed, but is that such a bad thing? That was an interesting angle that I didn't, I think he was just coping with himself. He's like, no, please just let me stay here. But man, what the world could have been like with Indy and Archimedes running shit. I don't know. I would love to see that world. So, but no. Alas, he's back with Marion, which is better. It's his time. It's where he's supposed to be. So I'm in agreement. But
it was kind of cool though. Like the minute they crossed over, like into next time period, like it was all bewilderment and just awe from Indy, and like things trying to kill him are happening all around him that
Mm-hmm.
whole sequence, and never once do you really see him like do anything other than be amazed at it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
Like
He's
it
like,
was very apparent that like as soon as they crossed over and he had seen what he was witnessing right then, he was like, I'm good,
mm,
I'll do it here. That's
I've done
okay.
it
Let me.
all.
I'm
He's
cool.
yeah, I've
Like this is the shit I live for right here, trying to see something like this. So if
mhm.
it happens, that's cool.
Right, I'm good. I'm good. Yeah, no, and it is really, really cool to see the lengths that Helena goes to try to save him and stuff. You know, I appreciate that. Like, cause that monologue she gives to Archimedes where she's like, there's nothing he can do for you. You know, like she's saying Archimedes, there's nothing Indy can do for you, but she's really saying to Indiana, you know, like, there's nothing Archimedes can do for you. Like you need to be in your time. He needs to be in his. This is where you belong. You know, like and I love Phoebe Waller-Bridge so much. I think that the sort of steely exterior she deposes, where she is a little bit more, you know, I'm trying to think of Belloc, but not willing to align herself with Nazis, you know, that sort of thing. She's kind of halfway in between Indy and Belloc. She is kind of like the middleman, where on her way to being that, but she's not there, you know. Like whenever she kicks the dude off and he's like, help, and she's like, sorry, but you are a Nazi, you know, like
That was hilarious.
like I'm not gonna feel bad about this. It's a great choice, man. And so and another fun bit of, you know, trivia about Phoebe Waller-Bridge being in Dial of Destiny is that she is the voice of L3 in Solo: A Star Wars Story, and she gets uploaded into the Millennium Falcon, which Han Solo
Oh, come on. Okay.
pilots.
That's
Yeah,
pretty
so
cool.
That's a fun
His
little connection.
goddaughter is the fucking pilot of
yeah.
the okay. Yeah, that's pretty nice. I'm not gonna lie. I wasn't really, I mean, I think she's supposed to be like antagonistic, not really, or just kind of
I mean,
opposing Indy. It's like, oh, I want to sell this, you know, I want to make the money off of this, while Indy's like, no, this belongs in a museum. And not that I hated her, but it was like, when's your redemption coming? Like, it felt like, like, make it happen. And then when she finally, like, on the ship and she has the dynamite and like they light it with the cigarette, like behind his back, and then it starts, that's like, I'm like, oh, finally. Like, this is the part of the movie that I've been waiting for.
And there's this cool element to her where you can tell she's being something she knows she isn't. There's a part in the streets of Sicily whenever the little guy is like, is this really what we're doing? Is he really running the show? You know, and she's like, no, he's not. We're always going to sell the stuff, you know, like, but you can tell there's something holding her back. Like she even like looks off at him and is kind of like, but I don't know. I don't mind this. You know, like I like what we're doing here. And I really, really appreciated that. I think that if they do spinoffs, Helena Shaw feels like a likely candidate to be the one who gets that spinoff. I would love a Shaw and Short Round series. Helena and we get Phoebe Waller-Bridge and Key Kwan teaming up to do a little adventure. I think that would be a great time. But yeah, no, it's fun, man. And there's something so moving about our heroes aging, you know. Not just Indiana Jones, but Harrison Ford. You know, it reminds me a lot of, funny enough, and this is going to be anybody who loves movies is going to be like, what the fuck are you talking about? But it reminds me of The Irishman. The ending of that movie with Robert De Niro sitting secluded and Martin Scorsese's kind of commentary on how he's getting older and how there's not much time he has left and how we are a sum of our actions, and this is what happened to Frank Sheeran. And there's something so moving, like Joe Pesci being in the prison, unable to eat food on his own. Yeah, exactly. You know, like it's one of those things where like there's something so moving about mortality. And I think putting that on display, like even before they say anything together, seeing Karen Allen and Harrison Ford at that age together is enough to move me, you know, like, because there's also something so tender about romance no matter what. There's something even more tender about romance at an age like that, you know, like it's a different level. There's a different level of commitment, you know, there's a different level of love going on there. And so there's something there already that is enough to make me feel incredibly deeply. And then to do one of the more natural and meaningful and moving callbacks of any movie I've ever watched actually hit me like a truck. Because that's not just self-referential to the franchise, it's self-referential to their relationship. And it was meaningful to them, not to the viewer. It was meaningful to the viewer, but it wasn't only meaningful to the viewer. It was meaningful to Indy and Marion, and I liked that
And
a lot.
how it was done.
I will say that they didn't cheapify too much of the callback stuff in this movie.
No.
I will
Yeah.
give it credit. Like it's really easy. Like you've seen a lot of movies, like sequels, like well past that. Just
No,
that's what they're
100%.
going for. It doesn't come across like that, and I'll give it credit for that because like if it had that not going for it like as much
It
as
could
it
have been
does,
ugly. Yeah.
it like this wouldn't have much redeeming.
It's
going,
very, very
like, you know what I mean?
clear. There's a good difference that I like to point to, even versus the sequel trilogy, who I enjoy the sequel trilogy. J.J. Abrams clearly has a reverence for Star Wars, and his characters have a reverence for Star Wars. You know what I'm saying? It feels like they would know a lot of stuff. It's history, you know, like it's galactic history. What I like about this is that James Mangold clearly reveres the Indiana Jones movies, but he's not trying to rip them. He is trying to do something original, you know, which is something you could argue J.J. Abrams fails to do with The Force Awakens, is that he is basically regurgitating aesthetics and regurgitating everything that already came before it and just going ahead and trying to make a new movie out of it. James Mangold just didn't have the juice that was necessary to recontextualize Indy for the modern age. And I think that's important, that he clearly reveres it, but he's not relying on it. You know, but there's also this part of me that's like, maybe he could have benefited a little bit from relying on it. You know, like there, like maybe there is something there where if he would have been like, because he's not doing Spielberg, and maybe he's not doing Spielberg because he can't do Spielberg.
Which is
Imitation Spielberg would have been maybe even worse. Like if you tried,
well, that's the thing, is that's what
just...
a lot of people say. That's what J.J. Abrams is. Funny enough,
Imitation Spielberg.
Imitation Spielberg. Which, not a bad take. The I think that James Mangold, it's just so fascinating to know he has a movie under his belt that is so similar in premise.
Where the character's at, yeah.
Logan, that is crazy.
That is not at all like, you know, an aged hero who's way past his prime, who is well renowned, but people don't really give a shit about him anymore. And, you know, he goes on this adventure that he's trying to help the young person he's with find themselves, and in turn they will help him find him. Like it's exactly the same as Logan in premise, but the fact that the execution is so vastly different is fascinating. And it has to be different. You know, I don't want a Logan Grizzly Indiana Jones movie. You know, like I do want it to be fun. I want it to have its flair. I want it to be indie. And for the most part it is. But there's just something missing that just doesn't work.
Here's one thing I've noticed is like we've been talking about this for almost an hour. That movie was longer than any of the other Indiana Jones movies. And I can't think of one sequence where I came away thinking like, oh wow, the set building or the like stunt work was
it's also
like
intangible.
Like, all of the stuff that like credits to
like,
Spielberg, some of
I
the
wonder,
creative
the
like
Tomb of
camera
Archimedes
work, like
in the water.
if you watch some
and
of
then
the
they
stuff
went down and
Spielberg
slid.
good.
That you know, that's cool, but everything else just it didn't feel real. Like it had the the Hollywood, I don't know, computerized
It had modern
feel.
Hollywood blockbuster sheen, like that's what it feels like. And like that's not good. That's not what indie's been, It's not good for any movie. For it to feel like every other movie. And I think that that's the problem with Dial of Destiny is that you couldn't pick this out of a lineup from any Disney blockbuster of the last 5 years. They all feel like this. And that's not good. The corporation shouldn't have an identity. The filmmaker should have the identity. You know what I'm saying? And the fact that and that's why I'm so thankful for Harrison Ford. That's why I'm so thankful for Phoebe Waller-Bridge. That's why I'm so thankful for, Boyd Holbrook and Mads Mikkelsen and all the actors in this movie make this movie as good as it possibly can be because they are unabashedly committing to less than material, And that's the thing is that the material is not even less than. I think it's an editing thing. I think and cinematography. I think that it's just, oh my God, it's long. You can take the exact material we have and make this a good movie.
Mm-hmm. And it felt like a lot of the chases were just because we can, or let's because we're
that's
here
what Indiana Jones is, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of what.
Well, here's the thing: when you have so many damn steps to achieve, and I'm not saying that this hasn't happened before in Indy, but I will say that a lot of times he doesn't get chased from every step to step to step. Sometimes
he finds his
the
way
chase
to the
doesn't
next
happen,
step, yeah.
and then maybe they catch him after he finds it or something. But there's really 3 or 4 steps. You have the beginning when they're chasing him through New York after he gives it to her there. Then you get chased in
wherever
Tangier.
Tangier, thank you. Yes, yes.
You get chased in Tangier. Then you go in the ocean, and you're chased in the ocean. And then you finally make it to Italy, and they don't chase you there, I guess, but they end up chasing you again.
They
kidnap the kid.
Yeah, they show up right after Indy does all the work. It's like Indy does all the work, and they show up right afterwards to take it all.
That's fine. That's what the villains in Indiana Jones do.
True.
But here's the thing: is that think about Raiders and think about Temple of Doom and even The Last Crusade. There isn't a worldwide chase going on. You know what I'm saying? They're not chasing him. It's not a globe. They are globe-trotting adventures, but they aren't chasing him from every location to every location. They find their way there also, and then they reach a stalling point and are like, oh God, we don't know where else to go. Now we have to follow Indiana Jones. You know what I'm saying?
Sometimes Indy has to go into enemy line, he has to go to them and it never he was always on the run, always just kind of on to the next thing. And I guess it is the classic Indy trope of he does all the work and then the villain just takes all the credit and does whatever. But I don't know, it just feels completely different in this one versus the others.
Well, and there's also the fact that we go to New York and we go to Tangier and we go to Italy. And we go to
Casablanca for a pit stop, which was a cool
brief stop in Casablanca. But... Yeah. Do we end up in Greece? Is that where we end up?
Yeah, at the cave or the ear of whatever.
And that's right across. That's right across the street from Italy. So it's right there. But this feels the least globe-trotting, even though it probably on paper is the most globe-trotting.
Yeah.
Temple of Doom, I know we start in China.
And then fall out of a plane.
Fall out of a plane into India. And we're in India. You know? And that feels more globetrotting than this does. There's a tangibility to the environments that makes them distinguish themselves. I had Tangier is Tangier because it's got the piss yellow Hollywood filter. That's how I know it's Tangier. Because the sun cooks a little bit different down there. Because that's where we are. But I mean, Italy and Greece, like I said, they're right across the pond from each other, so it's like they would have a similar feel. But like I can't distinguish those particularly well. New York, I can only really distinguish because we start the movie there. But it doesn't feel much different than the sequences in Italy or Greece. Like everything feels the same, even though we are in a new place doing a technically new thing. It just kind of feels like the same thing over and over in this movie.
Crazy you bring up that Logan comparison because the X-Men movies before Logan or his movies, they're known as like this super campy and whatever, and then it took this serious gut wrench like turn to send off a character and be very serious, and it looked great. Everything was firing all cylinders. Then you have Indy, which is already cinematically held as the gusto and is good, and then you get to this send off from the same guy, and it's the opposite. Or it's
and
like,
there is a lot more to live up to. Maybe there's a certain pressure there. Like I said, COVID production. Like it is different. You are trying to live up to Steven Spielberg.
that's fair. That
like you're not trying to match Bryan Singer. You know what I'm saying? Like, fuck that guy. But like, so like there are bigger shoes to fill. There are different production circumstances, and that does take a toll. That does take a toll. But at a certain point, if those are the stakes, I like Harrison Ford being all in on this is what makes it good. It's what makes it at all redeeming, because Harrison Ford loves the character, because you can feel how much he loves the character, and because you feel this is a send-off. Crystal Skull could have been a send-off, Crusade could have been a send-off, but this is it. And you can tell this is it, and he knew it was it. And watching the way that he cares about this character, it means the world to me, man. I love this franchise. I love this character. I love Harrison Ford. So
yeah, you got both
ultimately
performance and character. I couldn't really go with anyone else here for me. Marion was actually kind of close for just coming in there at the end.
Right.
But no, you're right. He is the Rock. Through every single movie. I think we've said this every single time, that it's like you're never gonna doubt this guy. There's a reason. I know they kept with him, and they made more movies after Raiders with him. They had a really good thing going, and then I don't know, maybe too much corporate stuff got in the works, or too much, I don't know, just franchises I feel like naturally go down this road anyways. But I swear if they do bring him back, Harrison Ford is done. The human, I feel I'm with you there. I still want to watch the documentary, and then I'll be more even in that camp.
Yeah, Timeless Heroes. Everybody should watch that.
If they bring him back in any digital capacity, to do it, that I will officially hate. Like, I know, but please use this time thing, this whatever the name of it is, I forgot. Use it to make spinoffs. This is a perfect indie multiverse. This is their multiverse now. They can go in any point in history, like kind of Doctor Who it up, I guess, but Indiana Jones with a new young gun. That I'm fucking game for. Indy, if he's to be used, it's the old guy that has wisdom, not what?
You know what it should be? An animated show.
That would be even... Actually, yes. No humans involved at all. Yeah, just complete story. No... I think that's even better. I didn't even cross my mind there.
And an animated series, I think that would lend itself... Like, if they want to do a spinoff that involves Indiana Jones, it should be animated. They should never touch this again live action. I do think that I would be super down for Helena and short round stuff in the future, though. I think that would be a great time. And I have a tough time believing that Disney, as much as they've been utilizing Ke Quan in the wake of his Oscar win and everything, Everywhere All at Once, wouldn't want to do that. But
they just had him announce they just had him announce the Indiana Jones ride.
They did
coming
to really
the other day. Yeah.
At D23. But like he's done a lot of, he's been in Loki, he was in Zootopia, he's going to be in Zootopia season 2, the second Zootopia movie. He's done a lot of stuff with Disney, so I wouldn't be surprised if they do. The problem is that this movie cost $300 million to make. Do you know how much it made?
Not $300 million.
About 350.
Oh.
So.
Oh, okay.
That's
not what they were hoping for. That's for sure.
No,
but at least still broke.
A commercial flop.
Yeah.
Like it was a commercial flop, and that's not ideal. That's certainly not ideal. So like, the fact is that Indiana Jones doesn't sell modernly the way that they want. Disney pays attention to that more than it does anything else. I don't anticipate us actually getting anything Indiana Jones for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Which frankly, I think is good. I think this should be it. I if they are going to do stuff, those are the ideas I have, but I'd prefer they didn't do anything. I'd prefer this was it,
Right.
Yeah, I'm
yeah.
there. No, as long as it's anyone other than Harrison Ford, is just a new continuation if they decide to. That's my only thing. Or
young Alden Ehrenreich being the young Indy. Really, really do it up.
Honestly, that is the only that's the only recast I might be comfortable with is giving it to him, giving him his time to shine, and letting him. Oh, that would be kind of nice. But
just typecast him as anything Harrison Ford.
Young Harrison Ford is just Alden Ehrenreich.
New Blade Runner movie.
Blade
Alden
Runner.
Ehrenreich. Just anything. Let's do it all. But
oh god.
Okay.
Yeah, no. But he would never. He fucking Alden Ehrenreich's done with Disney after Solo.
Fair enough.
And after Ironheart, which he's about to be in. But like whenever he was on the set of Oppenheimer, and he was they did a behind the scenes interview, and he's like, "It's so nice to be a part of something that I can like actually be proud of."
Yeah.
I feel good about it, and I'm not just saying that for a camera. It's super funny to I can't blame him either. But I like Solo, but I can't blame him for being pissed about the reception of it and the way Disney treated it. So. And because of that reception, I doubt they have any interest in ever recasting a young Harrison Ford in anything ever again.
I hope they've learned their lessons. I sure hope so.
Yeah, and that's what sucks is that Alden Ehrenreich actually wasn't the bad stuff that had to do with Solo.
Yeah.
That's not the lesson, but that's what they'll take from it. But yeah, so I love this franchise. I loved these movies.
Mm-hmm.
Now that we're here, now that we've got all 5 down, do you guys have a ranking of the Indiana Jones movies?
I feel like I do. Yeah, like this feels. I kind of just knew right after this one. Like I was like maybe I'll make a list, and I kind of just know off the top of my head. Raiders and Crusade. I don't know if I can really ever choose a favorite out of those two. They're just kind of 1A and 1B for me. If I had to pick one, I've been going back and forth on this for days, but I'd probably pick Raiders. I don't. It's. I love Crusade, and I said that it was my favorite. I think in the episode, and that nothing. This is peak indie. Raiders is just kind of. It's the first one.
Raiders.
It's
Raiders,
the intro. Yeah. It's I don't know. It's cinema gold. I don't know. It's everything good. And then I go Crystal Skull. My next. That's my number 3. I actually just the sci-fi and everything, and then I go Temple of Doom, and then down to Dial of Destiny for me. But
okay,
that's where I stand. At least I don't know if.
Yeah, I'm not too far off. My 1 and 2 are definitely Raiders and Crusade. 3, 4, and 5, probably Temple, Crystal Skull, Dial is probably how I would go. I think that the highs of Temple of Doom are higher than the other two. Now, obviously, it has a pretty massive fucking low, but that's and that's hard to overcome. But ultimately, while I love Dial of Destiny and I love the ending, it doesn't do enough to elevate it beyond Crystal Skull for me. And Crystal Skull, while I also love that movie, doesn't do quite enough to be as good as Temple of Doom. So that's kind of my justification. So it's just the release order, except 2 and 3 are switched. That's That's my ranking. But yeah, so and ultimately, it's important to emphasize I love all 5 of these movies. I've got all. If you're adding up the stars on Letterboxd, there's 25.
Yeah. Clean sweep
you know,
there.
That's how it went for me. There's 25, 5 out of 5 on all 5 of these films, and yes, that's ridiculous, but it is where it's how I feel. And Letterboxd, that's kind of how I utilize it. It's like, fuck it. All the Star Wars movies have 5 out of 5 on there too for me. You know, like that's how I feel. I love those movies, and I'll talk about them in a different light. That's why my Letterboxd is and everything. That's why we do a fucking podcast. But it's a fun little way to get to know what I love, and that's I do love Indiana Jones.
Mm-hmm.
So I had a great time here. But do we have anything else to say?
Oh, no.
I think we're there.
Crazy. We finished the franchise. Yeah. Wow.
I mean, it's kind of insane. It feels like it took us a lot less time than 6 weeks to do this. It took us 6 weeks to talk all 5 of these movies.
Wow.
Well, I was getting ready to say, it feels like we've done it literally every week, and then I was like, well, no, we took 1 week off.
We took a week off.
You said
like,
6, and that, I guess there was 5 movies, 5.
Yeah. Like,
wow.
Yeah. So, like, I don't know.
I
It
haven't
feels like
been
time
this
flew by.
regularly. I haven't been this regularly involved in a while either.
I know,
Mm-hmm.
and you're always welcome. We love having you, buddy. But yeah, with that, I'll go ahead and do the plugs, and then we can rate this thing, and then we'll sign off. But if you would, head to patreon.com/pennybloompod, where you find over 50 hours of exclusive content, all sorts of book reviews, comic book reviews, movie reviews, and exclusive Penny Bloom Dispatch content. For $1.50 a month, you can support the podcast financially, which is huge because it costs me money, and I don't make any off of it unless it's over there. You can head to Twitter, follow at PennyBloomPod. You can also follow at Cinementalists, like it is spelt in the description here. We are an offshoot of the Penny Bloom podcast, which is why I make mention of it so heavily. We are in the midst of an interesting overhaul. It is December. So we're back to doing Dispatch weekly as of yet. Depends on the Dune television show and if we're feeling it. But Dispatch is on Fridays, and we are on Mondays now. This is the first episode we're recording, Cinementalists, where we're Mondays. We've decided that. Now, obviously, every episode will have come out on a Monday, but as of recording, none of our episodes have come out. So happy December. And we've got a fun month ahead of us. For the next 3 weeks, we will be covering the Lord of the Rings movies. We are going to be doing the theatrical editions of Lord of the Rings. We are not tackling the extended editions yet. We figured 3 hours per was probably enough.
Yeah.
So that's what you can expect in the weeks to come. And then into the new year, we will be doing our top 100 films of the 2020s so far. We'll be halfway through the year, 5 years down in the 20s, 5 years left. What better time to do a halftime heat check than now? So we are doing a 10-part top 100 of the 2020s for the Cinementalists. Mm-hmm. So, and I'm sure Dial of Destiny is going to creep in there for me because, boy, oh boy, do I love this thing. But, yeah, so that's what we've got coming for the next couple months. You should stick with us. But follow at Penny Bloom Pod for any meaningful updates on if a schedule changes or anything. And follow at Cinementalist for what we're going to be doing here. And our coverage of Skeleton Crew starts on Fulcrum, a Star Wars podcast, this Wednesday. So you ought to be there. You ought to be there, and we will discuss Skeleton Crew. But, yeah, let's go ahead and rate this thing. How is everyone feeling? This feels like the most interesting one.
I know.
I don't know precisely how to... I always like to say, it's impossible to summarize all your feelings in a number, but we like to do it anyway, and this feels like one of the more impossible ones yet. How's everybody landing?
7 is where we say things are starting to get good. And this has enjoyment and critical kind of all rolled up into one here. So like the ending does a lot of heavy lifting.
I don't and critical.
I don't think I can call this actively bad. There's no way I can go below a 7. The lowest we've given any indie movie was a 9. But I feel comfortable going a whole point below that. Like 8 is my gut. I wanted to go a little lower. I wanted to be like 7.5 because of just how kind of nothing hollow the first bit of the movie is.
I think
Um,
the amount I love the ending does enough to boost it to an 8, but I have a tough time going higher than that
it's tough.
personally.
That's the ceiling, yeah, is what it feels like.
Yeah, how about you, Kyler? How you feeling?
My gut when we said rating was 8. I was like, 8. That was where I was at. Now
Yeah,
I've
because
heard both of you,
I
so I
like it a
feel
lot. I love it.
well. And like, here's the thing: I just feel like they do this thing where like they have a good thing or a good stretch or a good like 5-10 minute sequence or something, and then it's like 25-30 minutes without it, and so like it's just about like you said, the ending does a lot. But
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like I said, there's little stretches where they catch it, like the
Mm-hmm.
subway sequence on the horse, like that's really fun. Like that's pushing the fold. Like it's hard to do new stuff in India at this point. So I will
right.
give them credit. They really reach for it. Like we haven't really seen him do underwater stuff. Like
Yeah, underwater was
they
cool. Yeah,
they
the
really
eels.
went for it. They
Yeah.
really went for it. So like I will give them the credit. I think you can give them an 8. Like the way they
Mm.
wrap the character, like as long as you can do that without me being outraged, like I feel like I can comfortably give one of my favorite, most beloved franchises,
A good
worst
send off.
movies, an
Yeah,
8. I think I can give it an. I
Well,
feel good
well,
enough.
the
I feel
math
good about
is
it too.
pretty easy for this
Mm.
franchise, boys. No averages needed here. I think we've all just
All round
been in
numbers.
agreement. Yeah, just tens, nines, and eights. Is or 1 8 is all we
10,
got.
10,
But
10, 10,
wow.
9, 8.
Okay, are we all in agreement though? For
I
we all
am.
are there
Yeah,
at the
I'm
8 then.
there. I'm there.
Okay, then I
In
guess
fact, I'm confident most will view that as
as high.
incredibly generous.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah. I mean,
But we are generous. We love these movies. We're not critics. You know,
mhm.
that's not what we do. We will talk about the movies the way we want to talk about them, and I love
And I
this. I
mean,
love this movie. We're not going to talk a lot of movies I don't love or think I'll love.
if I can
You
be
know,
honest, if I can be honest, like if you've watched the three of us talk about shows or movies, we aren't very often hard on anything. I felt like we said more bad about this movie than any other movie I've talked about. And we've
100%.
reviewed Iron Man 2 together.
Mhm.
So, I mean, and that one's pretty widely not enjoyed by the vast majority, and we were pretty kind of that. So, I mean, I think you can read between the lines. Like,
We're
we
loving
weren't
Yeah,
just the
critics.
most generous.
We're loving
yeah,
people.
we're loving. We're
Um,
loving. Yeah, so that's kind of how it's going to be. And Kyler, we can't wait to have you back. We've got something on the horizon that I know for a fact you will be involved in. Haven't
hmm.
talked to you about that yet, but it will be in anticipation of something in 2025. And I'm excited to get you back in. Um, I can't wait for that. But with
Mm.
that, we will conclude this episode of The Cinementalists. I'm Colton Robertson. I'm joined by Joseph George. Thank you very much, homie.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure to be here.
Oh, and it's always a pleasure to have you. Thank you very much, KBZ Kyler Barnett.
No problem, man. Just remember, it's not what you believe, it's how hard you believe it.
Spit.
Damn.
Spit.
Damn.
Absolutely. With that, remember, it ain't the years, it's the mileage.